Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Hamas is set to release 48 hostages, both living and deceased, from Gaza between 5 and 7 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. US President Donald Trump has called his upcoming Middle East trip very special and has stated that the war in Gaza is over. Meanwhile, Hamas is demanding that 7 Palestinian leaders be freed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that the hostage release brings tears of joy. He's called for Israelis to unite and has warned that some enemies are still plotting attacks. He has stated that Israel has achieved tremendous success and victory, but the fight is not over. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that Britain will provide $27 million aid package to Gaza in order to support water, sanitation and hygiene services in the region. The funds will be delivered through UNICEF, the World Food Programme and the Norwegian Refugee Council. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again spoken with US President Donald Trump. This is their second conversation in a 2-day span. Zelensky has called the talks productive, which focused on Ukraine's defense, air capabilities and resilience. He's added that Trump may approve Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine if Russia continues the war. US President Donald Trump has assured that tensions with China will ease. He's in fact stated that Chinese President Xi Jinping is a highly respected leader and has emphasized that the US aims to help China and not harm it. Reappointed French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has unveiled his new cabinet, keeping most key ministers, including the finance and foreign ministers, unchanged. Meanwhile, notable changes include Laurent Nunez as Interior Minister and Edouard Jeffrey as the Education Minister. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand has arrived in New Delhi for her first official visit to India. She will meet with India's top ministers in order to reset diplomatic ties, boost economic cooperation and strengthen strategic and people-to-people relations between both nations. A mass shooting at Winnie's Bar in South Carolina has left 4 people dead and over 20 injured. Police are investigating the incident, with several victims now in critical condition. Authorities are continuing their search for suspects as the community mourns this tragic event. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. What's taking place in the Middle East? An ICRC convoy has arrived at the first hostage collection point in Gaza. Meanwhile, a convoy of IDF military vehicles have also arrived at Ofer prison, where Palestinian prisoners are expected to be released. In Israel, hundreds have gathered at the Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, eagerly awaiting the return of loved ones held captive by Hamas. Families are cheering, with some holding placards and photos of their missing family members, and are celebrating this long-awaited moment. They've expressed how they've been eagerly awaiting for this day to come. Listen in.
I think everybody's looking, at least here, people are looking to be close to others. Unity, coming together, common goal, common purpose, and hoping we're going to have a better tomorrow.
שמחה והתרגשות באמת עצומה, להרגיש שבאמת אנחנו בתהליך של חזרה לחיים קצת יותר נורמליים וחזרה לשגרה, אני מקווה.
In the meantime, US President Donald Trump is on his way to the Middle East to celebrate this ceasefire and the hostage release deal. He's called his visit very special and has confirmed that the deal is almost finalized. Just a few hours remain up until the hostage prisoner swap will take place. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also expressed relief over this release, particularly the return of Israeli children who've been held hostage, but has also warned of possible future threats from Hamas. Hamas's armed wing has stated that it is committed to the ceasefire agreement and its timeline as long as Israel adheres to their end of the deal as well. They have made it clear that any agreement must include the release of 7 prominent Palestinian leaders from Israeli prisons, including figures like Marwan Barghouti and Ahmad Sadat. All right, viewers, we're in fact getting some live visuals coming in from Gaza. At this point, you can clearly see the mood on the ground. People are hopeful, yet of course eagerly anticipating when exactly this hostage prisoner swap will be taking place. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingold, political analyst, joining us from Taipei. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. This is the first phase of the deal. There are negotiations slated to take place later as well. Donald Trump is en route the Middle East. He's slated to chair a very crucial peace summit where 20 world leaders will be gathering. That's not all. We're also learning that he's likely to address the Israeli Knesset as well. What, in your assessment, would this finally pave the way to the end of the war and lasting peace in the Middle East?
The only thing we know for sure at the moment is that there will be a hostage release and a prisoner release. So the Hamas will release the remaining living hostages and the remains of the deceased hostages, and Israel is going to release a substantial number of Palestinians. Anything beyond that, we simply don't know. We don't know how Gaza will be governed, other than there's a proposal for this international organization chaired by President Trump and led by Tony Blair, which would have a mix of Palestinian and multinational technocrats. There's talk about a multinational peacekeeping force, or it would function more like a police force to maintain public order in Gaza. But although Hamas has indicated they've agreed that they're not going to participate in governance, they've also not agreed to surrender their weapons or to fully leave Gaza. And that's a key issue for Israel. And if Hamas thinks they're going to be able to retain their weapons, then the war is very likely going to start again. And Hamas simply has to surrender its weapons and to leave in order for the war to truly end. But with regard to your final question, what does this mean for peace in the Middle East? For decades, people have described the dispute between Israel and the Palestinians as the key to Middle East peace. But this is a volatile region where hostilities begin, not related to Israel and the Palestinians. So even if there is a ceasefire that lasts, there's still other hotspots in the region. Hezbollah is still seeking to have armed conflict with Israel in southern Lebanon. Obviously, parts of Syria are unstable, parts of Iraq are unstable, and Iran remains a regional threat. So, no, this is not going to usher in an era of peace throughout the Middle East, even though we hope that in the near term, the war in Gaza will actually come to an end.
And in the meantime, we've also seen fresh demands by Hamas, last-minute demands as well, even as Israel has published a list of the prisoners that they will be releasing. Hamas has called for the release of 7 prominent Palestinian leaders, including figures like Marwan Barghouti and Ahmad Sadat. Now, Israel maintains that they are terror convicts. What do you make of this fresh demand that has come through by Hamas?
That's typical for Hamas. It's easy to criticize Israel and how Israel has approached negotiations, or how the previous ceasefire fell apart. But we see Hamas is not really a trustworthy negotiating partner, and they've never been. And they make last-minute demands to try and blow up the deal, and then see how the United States reacts and what kind of pressure the U.S. will put on Israel to agree to this last-minute demands. Now, it's easy enough for Israel to release people who may have been involved in planning terrorist activity or have been members of terrorist organizations, people who engaged in riots or rock throwing against Israeli soldiers. But when it comes to releasing prisoners who've actually been involved in the murder of Israeli citizens, that's a very difficult decision for the Israeli political leadership to make. And they've always been very reluctant to do that in some of these past deals, and this is certainly not the first time that there's been such a swap, not just in the current war, but even earlier. But it's a very difficult political decision, and Netanyahu is going to be very reluctant to agree to any last-minute changes, and certainly reluctant to agree to release any Palestinian murderers.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us. In the meantime, I'd like to point out these are live visuals coming in from Israel. You can see countless Israelis have now gathered. They're waving the Israeli flag. Some are smiling as well, eagerly anticipating the return of the hostages, which will take place very, very soon. More news coming in. The United Kingdom has pledged a significant $27 million in humanitarian aid to support Gaza. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that the funding will provide essential services like water, sanitation and hygiene through organizations such as UNICEF, the World Food Programme and the Norwegian Refugee Council. This aims to alleviate the widespread hunger, malnutrition and diseases affecting many in the region. This announcement comes as a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is holding. In addition, Britain is set to host a 3-day summit focused on Gaza's reconstruction, bringing together international governments, the private sector and development finance groups, including the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the World Bank as well. This year alone, Britain has contributed £74 million in humanitarian support to Palestine. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingold. Now, speaking of a post-war Gaza, if the plan in its entirety does come into effect, that is going to be, reconstruction is a long-drawn process. It will inevitably take many, many years. So what's really needed to be done urgently?
I would say the urgent thing here is still on Hamas. It's on Hamas to give up its weapons and to really depart Gaza forever. Because if they don't, it leaves open the possibility of future hostilities. Keeping in mind that over the past 20 years, Hamas and Israel have gone to war multiple times. 2023 was not the first time. And every time that they go to war, there's significant destruction in Gaza, and then it has to be rebuilt. In the past, it's been rebuilt with aid from the Gulf states, notably Qatar. But if donors are really going to commit to serious funding, the many billions of dollars that it will take to rebuild Gaza, whether that's housing, schools, any other type of public facilities, they're not going to commit that money if there's a possibility that there will be war again. So the onus is on Hamas to surrender, to leave, and that will give international donors the comfort they need that there won't be another war within a few years, and it's safe to invest these massive amounts of money that are needed to rebuild Gaza. You mentioned the UK has said they're going to donate $27 million. Well, that's just going to last a few days. There's 2 million people in Gaza. $27 million is not going to feed them for very long. So obviously, the countries leading this effort are going to be looking at multi-billion-dollar commitments to rebuild Gaza. But again, I would say the key thing here for that to be a success is for Hamas to go away.
Indeed, and in the meantime, we're also seeing, Netanyahu warned Israelis to still remain united despite this fragile peace that is existing currently. He's in fact told them to not remember that their enemies are still looking at attacking Israel. In the meantime, we've seen that Iran has snubbed Egyptian President El-Sisi's invite to the Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt. And its foreign minister has also given statements that they obviously do not trust the Zionist regime in Israel. Why do you think Iran is coming out and making these statements? Is it because its terror proxies have now been decimated?
Iran wants to remind everyone in the region that they're still there, that they're still a player, that they want to be relevant to the future of the West Bank and Gaza. But it's kind of hard to take them seriously. The reason why they do need to be taken seriously, though, is because of the potential that they're going to continue to research and develop nuclear weapons and/or provide funding to their terrorist proxy groups. But when it comes to Prime Minister Netanyahu, the thing to really watch here going forward, assuming that the ceasefire lasts and the war actually is over, which is still an if at the moment, but assuming that it is, then there's going to be a political reckoning in Israel. Netanyahu has tensions with his coalition partners. He has his criminal court cases that are ongoing. And also, when the war ends, there are going to be significant investigations in Israel into how the war began, into the intelligence and military failures that led to Hamas's attack on October 7th, 2023. And Netanyahu is going to be a target of those investigations because he was the prime minister for many years, or most of the period preceding Hamas's attack. So Netanyahu's position, once the war ends, because during the war you could say we need to be unified, but after the war ends, his position, his political position, does start to become tenuous, and that's going to be something really interesting to watch.
Thank you, Mr. Feingold, for taking out time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus away from the Middle East towards Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again spoken with US President Donald Trump. This is the second time in 2 days that such a telephonic conversation has taken place. Both leaders have discussed boosting air defenses, energy infrastructure, and long-range strike capabilities. The Kremlin, in the meantime, has expressed deep concern over possible US supply of Tomahawk missiles, warning of escalation from all sides. Meanwhile, Zelensky says that Russia's fear shows pressure may push Moscow towards peace. Trump maintains that on the 6th of October, he had not agreed to send the Tomahawk missiles, wanting to avoid escalation. But in the meantime, a lot has changed with Russia attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure and specifically downing the power grid as well. Zelensky has meanwhile praised his troops for holding back Russian airstrikes, with Ukraine advancing over 3 kilometers near Dobropilya and Orikhiv. He's also urged a stronger IAEA response, warning that Russia is escalating attacks on Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant as global focus shifts to the Middle East. Listen in to what the Ukrainian president has had to say.
Тиснути до цього потрібна більш чітка, чесна позиція МАГАТЕ. Росія може і мусить припинити обстріли, щоб ремонтні бригади могли працювати. Триває найдовший блекаут на Запорізькій АЕС. Вже майже 3 тижні станція на дизель-генераторах. Так не має бути. Росія користується моментом, і це зосередженість світової дипломатії на Близькому Сході. Путін пішов на ескалацію на ЗАЕС, також.
With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctorow, International Relations and Russian Affairs expert, joining us from Moscow. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Yet another telephonic conversation between Zelensky and Trump, even as Trump is heading to Egypt to focus on the Gaza peace summit. Zelensky earlier had urged Trump to build pressure on Russia to ensure that Russia comes to the negotiating table and does not escalate the attacks any further. What, in your assessment, is happening at the front lines? Because we are seeing claims by both, the Russians and the Ukrainians that they're making gains.
Well, the Ukrainians make such claims because they are pleading with Europe and the United States for further assistance. They want to demonstrate that they are actively conducting a war against Russia. But I wouldn't put much credence in their claims. Yes, there are movements here or there. There are setbacks for the Russians. There are much bigger setbacks for the Ukrainians across the whole front. So that is not really the issue of the day. But Mr. Zelensky has made his accusations with regard to Russian attack, supposed Russian attack on the nuclear power plant Zaporozhye, which is under Russian control. Very peculiar that you would attack something that you yourself controlled. It is only the nth example of Ukraine attributing to Russia what it itself is doing. The fatality figures that Ukraine has suffered, 1.7 million, are then projected onto Russia. The attacks on the Zaporozhye are projected onto Russia. This is all a very consistent propaganda line coming from Kiev that was originally supported and developed with help from MI6 Britain and from the US CIA.
Indeed, and we're also seeing now the US administration seriously mulling over the requests that Zelensky has made for the Tomahawks. Will this really change anything on the ground? Because some people are claiming that it will provide Ukraine an edge.
Well, the Tomahawks are a decoy. It's unlikely that any will be supplied, and it's still more unlikely that if they were supplied, they would have any significant impact on the field of battle. What is the issue here is they are a distraction from what the United States is already doing, which essentially makes it a co-belligerent with Ukraine and should be, in normal diplomatic tradition, the cause for Russia to declare war on the United States. What I have in mind is the ongoing U.S. facilitation of Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. And yesterday, we know that a fuel base in the little port town of Feodosia on the eastern coast of Crimea was effectively destroyed by such a swarm of Ukrainian drones, which were obviously guided by American intelligence. The United States is still doing this. They are providing critical intelligence and guidance information to the Ukrainians for their attacks that have destroyed a substantial part of Russia's refining infrastructure. And Mr. Putin is deliberately quiet about that because he maintains what I consider to be the hopeless objective of keeping Mr. Trump on side together with him and not joining the Ukrainians. That is a hopeless case, and it is doing great damage to Russia's deterrence.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some other very crucial developments. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has asked for additional air defenses and missiles during a phone call with French President Emmanuel Macron. This is according to Zelensky's evening address. He stated that both leaders are coordinating their positions, adding that Ukrainian military officials would directly communicate their urgent needs to France. Zelensky has stated that both sides have agreed to expedite the supply of defense assistance. Listen in to what Zelensky has had to say.
Говорив сьогодні також з президентом Франції Макроном. Теж ключове – це ППО, наша стійкість, також дипломатичні заходи наступних тижнів. Ми координуємо наші позиції. Ми домовилися, що наші військові передадуть Франції найперші потреби, і ми пришвидшуємо постачання.
Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctora. What do you make of this phone call between Macron and Zelensky? And once again, Zelensky putting in a request for, further air defense systems, this time with France.
This is a public relations stunt by two losers. Mr. Macron is holding on to power in France by his fingernails. He's looking for any international event to make himself prominent in the news, as you have just done, and other media are doing the same thing, recording what he's discussing with the Ukrainians to demonstrate falsely the relevance of France to international developments and geopolitics. France has no weight whatsoever. The Russians scorn not just Macron, but the French military establishment. And so this discussion, as I said, is between two losers. Mr. Zelensky will get virtually nothing worthy of talking about from the French because they don't have it.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your assessment of what's happening as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus to East Asia. Now, South Korea's defense minister, Ahn Gyu-bak, has revealed that North Korea is likely to have received technical assistance from Russia for its submarine development program. Now, speaking to the parliament, Ahn has confirmed that Pyongyang is acquiring various technologies to advance its capability, including the pursuit of nuclear-powered submarines and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. However, he has cautioned that this is a very premature development and they are yet to confirm if North Korea has successfully test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile. Now, the two countries have significantly expanded military cooperation recently, with North Korea reportedly deploying troops to support Russia in its war against Ukraine in exchange for military and economic aid. Now, South Korean intelligence has in fact furnished this report. We have been seeing efforts by the Lee Jae-myung administration in South Korea to extend an olive branch to North Korea, but this has been rebuffed time and again by Kim Jong-un, who's been citing the fact that United States is demanding nuclear disarmament by North Korea, which he says is a red line. US President Donald Trump has now stated that the United States wants to help China and not hurt it. This has come days after he threatened to impose an additional 100% tariff on China. Trump has stated that he highly respects President Xi Jinping and just had a bad moment, and he does not want to put China into economic depression. Meanwhile, US Vice President J.D. Vance has warned China to choose the path of reason, stressing that the United States holds stronger leverage in the dispute. Vance has stated that the Trump administration hopes to avoid a full-blown trade conflict, but would not hesitate to defend American interests. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung. He's a strategist focusing on Chinese policy and economics, joining us from Cairo. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting post by Donald Trump on his Truth Social platform in all capitals. Once again, he's called Xi Jinping a highly respected leader, but at the same time, he's taken a thinly veiled jibe, stating that the United States does not want to hurt China, indirectly demanding that China comes back to the negotiating table. Do you think China will relent in light of the tone that Trump has struck?
Well, this is another example of how President Trump is massaging the narrative. Let's not forget, only a few days ago, he was threatening to impose 100% tariffs on China, saying that it doesn't want, there's no point in meeting President Xi, and he's describing China as the continuing a threat to the United States interest. And then only a few days later, he's changing his tone again, but still trying to massage the rhetoric as if China is the demandeur for a more positive relationship, in the sense that China is the weaker party. But the other side of the coin is true, in the sense that Trump, it was President Trump himself who wanted to meet President Xi quite eagerly throughout the past couple of months. And it was he who said that he wanted to have a positive relationship with Beijing, until Beijing showcased its resolve to defend its own China's national interest by finding the stranglehold over rare earths. And the rare earths are so important to American interests, because something like 78% of the United States military relies on these rare earths, and there is no way that President Trump could defeat China's this Trump card. And that's why this is an example of President Trump kicking out again, the so-called TACO, Trump always chicken out. This is another example of that. But then he's trying to massage the rhetoric as if China is the weaker party, and he refers to the Chinese economy. In fact, if you look at the latest statistics, China's export overall has in fact grown under the past couple of months, in spite of the past couple of months of tariffs and so on, because China's have been pivoting to the Global South. And the Global South is a huge market out there, and then there's a great increase in trade and investment, especially after the Trump tariffs, which are affecting the Global South as well. And of course, for technology, China's now demonstrated its technological self-reliance, witnessed DeepSeek in AI, and China's success in launching its own space station and sending samples at the back of the moon. So I think that this is an example of President Trump very successfully in massaging the rhetoric. He wants to showcase his still on top of everything, including this tariffs and rivalry with China, and that is changing his tone because the Gaza situation is also changing. He wants to put his name on the Gaza situation, and he doesn't want any acrimony with President Xi to spoil his moods, and that's why he changes his face, his tone so rapidly. Another example, as I said, of the TACO, Trump always chickens out phenomenon.
Indeed, and what's also interesting is, Trump has stated that the United States does not want to hurt China, and this comes over and above his statement that Xi Jinping is having a bad moment. Is he, and considering that Vance has also made similar statements, is he trying to position the United States as having leverage in this trade war? And is that the reality, or does China have the edge, or at least the capability to stand up to the US?
Well, of course, every country is affected by Trump's tariffs, including American allies, because America, after all, is the largest economy in the world. But on the other hand, China is also the world's largest trader, the largest manufacturer by far, and it's got as deep as the predominant position in the global supply and value chain. So even though any pain China is suffering is very different from other countries. And in fact, as I mentioned before, statistics show that China's overall export has been increasing by pivoting to the global south, and China demonstrates stability on its technological self-reliance. In fact, and it was President Trump himself who wanted to meet President Xi, but he said that he doesn't want to hurt China. But on the other hand, apart from the tariff, he forgot to mention that only recently, days ago, he is instituting massive shipping charges on any ship made by China regarding which flag is carried, provided that such China-made ship called an American port, they're going to pay huge shipping fees. So that's another example of an all-out confrontation with China, which is perceived to be existential threat to American dominance. It's not only tariffs, but it's also shipping charges, technological stranglehold. There's still a lot of restrictions and banning various technologies, and also allying with Japan and other countries in the South China Sea to contain China. So this is a part of the overall Trump's overall strategy to win the kind of rivalry with China for global dominance. Again, he successfully tried to massage the rhetoric as if China is the demandeur, and he's winning on all fronts. Mm-hmm. But the reality is far from what he makes it out to be.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective on NewsX World. Shifting focus to France, the French presidency has announced that reappointed Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu's new cabinet lineup, with most top jobs remaining unchanged at a time when opponents are demanding a political shift in order to win their support for urgent budget talks. Now, Lecornu, who was reappointed as the Prime Minister, has pledged to deliver a cabinet of renewal and diversity, but stuck with his previous picks for most of the choice of the top jobs. Now, it remains to be seen if Lecornu's new cabinet will satisfy the opponents. Now, the hard-left France on board LFI has stated that it will file a motion of no confidence, as did the far-right National Rally, meaning that the new government will face a nail-biting vote before the end of this week itself. Alright viewers, breaking news coming in from the Middle East. We're now learning that Hamas has released 7 hostages in the custody of the Red Cross. This development has been confirmed by Hamas officials. Families and friends of hostages broke out into wild cheers as Israeli television channels have announced that the hostages were now in the hands of the Red Cross. This is a major development coming in. First confirmation that 7 of the 20 hostages slated to be released in the first batch has now been handed over to the Red Cross. They will be meeting their families very soon. It's quite an emotional moment. Netanyahu earlier said that this hostage release has brought tears of joy in the eyes of every Israeli citizen. You can clearly see those visuals as thousands of Israelis are now eagerly anticipating the return of the remaining hostages. They're waving the Israeli flag. You can also spot an American flag there as well. It's the United States that has helped broker this landmark deal. Remember, negotiations have been taking place in Egypt, and the first phase of which was agreed upon by Israel and Hamas. In fact, we've seen Qatar and Egypt mediate in this. A peace summit is slated to take place very shortly. Trump will be co-chairing that with the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. But there, of course, we have the first confirmation that 7 hostages have been released by Hamas. They've been handed over to the Red Cross, and families and friends of these hostages who have been missing their loved ones for more than 2 years now. They've broken into wild cheers as Israeli television channels announced that the hostages were in the hands of the Red Cross. More breaking news coming in. Hamas has released a full list of the 20 remaining live hostages that they are releasing. The list is as follows: Elkanah Bobut, Matan Angrest, Avinatan Or, Yosef Haim Ohana, Alon Ohel, Aviatar David, Guy Gilbodalal, Rom Brasalvaski, Gali Berman, Ziv Berman, Eitan Moore, Segev Kalfon, Nimrod Cohen, Maxim Herkin, Eitan Horn, Matan Zangaukar, Bar Cooperstein, David Cuneo, Ariel Cuneo, Omri Miran. You can see their photographs flashing on your screens. These are the list of 20 hostages that have now been confirmed by Hamas. They'll be, in fact, releasing them over the course of the day. Of course, 7 have now already been handed over to the Red Cross. This development has been confirmed by Hamas officials. Israeli media is also reporting the same. Their families and their loved ones are now, of course, cheering, glad that they are back home, something that they've been demanding for a long period of time. We'd earlier seen a heartwarming conversation between the families of the hostages and US President Donald Trump. They were cheering for Trump after this first phase of the Gaza peace pact was in fact agreed upon in Egypt. Of course, their family members await their return, eagerly anticipating when they'll be able to meet their loved ones. Meanwhile, we're getting to know that a total of 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli prisons are expected to be released in the West Bank. Meanwhile, 1,716 Palestinians from Gaza have been detained by Israel, are expected to be released at Gaza's Nasser hospital. You know, we just gotten live visuals a while back that our PCR crew was showing you. Cheers erupting as the hostages are being brought back. But in the meantime, we're also learning that a total of 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli prisons will be released in the West Bank, and 1,716 Palestinians from Gaza who've been detained by Israel are expected to be released at Gaza's Nasser hospital. And another very, very crucial development coming in. US President Donald Trump is watching all of these developments live from Air Force One as the hostage handover is now taking place. This information is coming in from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She's posted the same on her Instagram account as well. And the White House has maintained that what we are witnessing right now is a new dawn in the Middle East. Trump will be landing in Israel very, very soon. He departed about 9 hours ago. So he's slated to arrive in Israel very, very soon. He'll be addressing the Knesset, and then he'll be chairing, in fact, a very crucial summit in Egypt. All right, viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.